What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's daily market recap. We're wrapping up the week with another green day. We had a stock today that went up 256%. That was impressive. However, it was a lower price stock. Right now, it has 234 million shares of volume. It was the most obvious stock in the market, but because it started at about 45 cents a share, to me, I felt like it was too cheap. So I actually didn't participate in the whole beginning of the move until it got over $1 a share. Once it was over $1 a share, then at that point, I was like, all right, I'm gonna break the ice on it. And it ended up squeezing from $1 all the way up to just under $1.50. And so that was the area that I traded it. But you might wonder, why was it that I didn't break the ice on it sooner? This thing was obviously very strong, had a ton of volume, and everyone was focusing on it. So why didn't I get in sooner? I'm gonna break that down for you in just a moment. Now, before I do, let's set the stage of sort of context. Right now, it's Friday before a 3-day weekend. Monday is Memorial Day. So we knew that the Friday before a long weekend typically is lighter volume, a little slower, and not a day that companies are as likely to put out a really strong, fresh news catalyst. It might get forgotten over the weekend. However, in spite of that, we did get a nice move. Now, by the way, we are running our Memorial Day sales at Warrior Trading here. So if you want to spend the summer gaining financial literacy and learning more about the markets, make sure you check out our Warrior Starter and our Warrior Pro memberships. The link will be pinned to the top of the comments and in the description. So make sure you guys check that out. Now, when it comes to IMNN, this is a stock that made the big move here today. I approached it with some caution and didn't want to break the ice until it was over $1 a share. So what is it about a stock breaking over $1 a share that's important? Well, let's jump onto the whiteboard. So when a stock is below $1 a share, it trades down to the 1/100th of a penny, which means for a stock to go from 90 cents to $1 a share, there are a maximum of 1,000 increments in price. In other words, a stock could trade like this, 0.9995 by 0.9996. So to go over $1, it's got to keep going to 997, 998, 999, and then finally breaking over $1. But once a stock is over $1, the rules of the exchange are that all stocks over $1 trade with a minimum spread of 1 cent. Not a half a cent, certainly not a tenth of a cent, and not 1/100th of a cent, but 1 cent. Which means for a stock to go from 10 to $1.10, from $1 to $1.10, it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cents. That's only 10 increments. So 10 increments versus 1,000. So what do you think happens? Once a stock breaks over $1 and can hold that level, that's when we see a big move. But here's how I approach trading stocks as they're approaching that critical level of resistance. So let's say we have a stock that's squeezing up here, and the candles are getting progressively bigger. So that's very common as we're gaining momentum. And let's just say that this right here is $1 a share. So, well, that's gonna not give me enough space at the top of the chart. So let's move this down. So let's just say this is $1 a share right here. Okay, so that's gonna be $1 a share. That's $1. So when the stock comes up to $1, what will sometimes happen is that it squeezes through $1, you get a big topping tail, and then the next candle ends up being red, and then it just sells off and breaks back below $1. And when this happens, it ends up being a very clear rejection at $1. So I'm cautious about buying right into this resistance level, because if we end up having one of those big topping tails, and potentially it even reverses so quickly that it's immediately a really large red candle like this, maybe even with another topping tail, then it just looks like a massive rejection and I'm in way too high. So I don't like that. So what do I do to manage my risk? Well, instead of buying as it breaks over $1, I let it break, I let it pull back, and then I ask myself, is it holding $1 a share? And in this case today, IMNN came up and broke $1 and came up to a high of $1.10. Oops, so $1.10. So it ended up actually having a topping tail just like this. And then it dropped back down and dipped back below $1 to about 96 cents. So it kind of, all of a sudden was like, uh-oh, is this going to reject? But then it came back up and came back up again and then had another little topping tail right there. This would be more like that. So then it had a double top right there to $1.10. It dips down a second time, again, goes below $1 just for a moment, and then as it comes back up a third time, we're looking at potentially a flat top breakout. However, because this stock had already done this double top, during this period of time, you know what the MACD looked like? So the MACD, we've got the, basically the MACD was open, 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 and then had crossed. So this is our MACD, it's open, 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 and then had crossed and gone negative. So as this started to squeeze up right here, I said, wait a second, our MACD is negative. And that's because our moving averages, which sort of, are kind of right up under here like this, the moving averages were converging. They were moving apart, and then as the stock was going sideways, they were moving back together. So that made me feel like I wasn't sure it was going to work. But nonetheless, it did squeeze through $1.10, pops up, and then right here, we get a nice micro pullback. So we got a little micro pullback, and that was where I got in right there, and I rode the momentum up to what ended up being a high of $1.50. So we'll pull up the chart here, and then you could see in sort of more detail exactly how I traded it. Okay, so we had this first pop right here, which was, well, first we had this sort of rally from 40 cents up to 50, back down, back up, breaking through up to 60, 70 cents, back down, up to 75 cents, up to 80 cents. And at this point, the stock was taking kind of all the attention. And that was sort of when I was like, oh boy. So now my hope of getting some nice momentum on a stock in my preferred price range is sort of going out the window. It's probably not going to happen, which is a little bit of a bummer. But it ends up squeezing up here. You get that topping tail at $1.10, or just above $1.10. It then dips down below $1, and then back up here to about $1.10. Then it dips back down below $1, comes back up right here, but notice the MACD. Right there was where we crossed negative, and so now we're in the negative. So as it came back up right here, this is actually where we came back up to the double top, I was like, I don't know, MACD is negative. And then it drops again, comes back up again, and I'm like, I don't know, but that's where the MACD went positive. And so this right here was where I finally said, all right, I'm gonna jump in. So this is where I broke the ice on IMNN, getting in right here at about just under $1.30 for that first candle to make a new high. And I rode the momentum here up to $1.43. It pulls back. I bought this dip and then get the top up there at $1.45. I was hopeful this would break through $1.50. It was not able to do that. And then you can see the MACD went negative, and coming into the open, it dropped down, halted up, halted down, halted up, just very, very choppy at this point. Still holding up over 150% right now, 186%, but more or less, sort of holding in this range, but it's not as bullish as it was before. So this was our big move today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to really crush it. I made some money on it, but it's a cheaper stock. So the only way to make good money on it is to buy larger positions. So instead of my normal starter size of 2,500 shares, my starter on this was 10,000 shares. So 10,000 shares at $1.30 is $13,000. So 13,000. So buy 10,000, double to 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, and there 10 cents a share, you can make $5,000. So I ended up making $8,223.80 on IMNN. But as you can see, well, that was kind of putting me into the green, but I was up only 6,000 on the day today, which makes it my smallest green day of the month. And that is because of an unfortunate loss here on DGLY. So if we go back to the beginning of the day, the first trade that I took this morning was actually LTRY. So LTRY, lottery.com, I really wasn't sure this thing was gonna work, but you could see it did pop up right here at about 7 a.m. and it squeezed up even higher at the open. So the way I traded this, we got this initial pop right here going into 7 a.m., right about 7 a.m. It ends up squeezing all the way up right here, and it dips down, and I bought this dip right here off of VWAP, and this candle here ends up hitting a high. This was at about, let's see, this was right here, up to a high of 229. So I took the trade on that, and unfortunately, although I was profitable on it, you can see it ends up being a gravestone doji. So the shape of this candle right here is a gravestone doji. Opening, closing at the same price with that taller upper candle wick, it's a bearish candle. And so after that gravestone doji, it pulled back, came back up, pulled back, but I was like, no, I can't trust this. That candle is too bearish. So I only got one trade on that, made, 1,500 bucks on it, small winner. Next stock that pops up on my scanner, BCTX. BCTX, I jumped into this fairly quickly. It is a biotech stock, which I liked. We got a nice little dip and then a curl. So you could see this, the pop up, the pullback, the pop up, the pullback. And this right here was the curl that I took for the squeeze back up. Hit 460, wanted to see it pull away up to 5. It couldn't, but was still able to lock up a little bit of profit there. $3,486. So it was in the green on those two stocks, and then DGLY pops up at 9 a.m. So at 9 a.m., this thing pops up, and it hits the scanner, and it hits at 3, 350, 4, and I added right here, looking for the squeeze over $4. It then immediately reverses, and I lost $7,000 on it. It drops all the way down below 3, down to 250, all the way down to $1.61 before bouncing back up here to 235. So I jumped in this stock quickly. It is a stock I've traded in the past. It does have a history of doing reverse splits. I knew the float was pretty low, and I thought it had the potential of making a big move. I was right that it had the potential for volatility, but I caught the volatility going the wrong way. And so with that, right at 9 a.m., I gave back the profit that I had made on BCTX and LTRY. And so I asked myself, is this the place I should just walk away? I never really was in the driver's seat today. Now I'm kind of dipping into the red. Should I just call it a day, or do I keep trading? And at that point, I asked myself, well, what is the obvious stock in the market? And did I make a mistake on DGLY? And I think the mistake that I made was taking a trade on a lighter volume stock when something else was more obvious. Now, it just so happened that the stock that was more obvious, IMNN, wasn't one I would typically like because it's a little bit lower priced, but that was the stock most people were focusing on. So that's where the attention was. And so I thought, well, if that's where the attention is, and that's probably where I should trade. So then I started focusing on IMNN and waiting for a good opportunity, and I did end up getting one. Although I didn't make a lot on it, I was able to recover the loss on DGLY and get myself back up to actually a new high of day at $6,122.58, which is a good recovery all in all and preserves the green streak, which is certainly nice. But there's no doubt that today was a little bit slower. And it shouldn't be a surprise. I knew that that was not only a possibility, that was a high likelihood given that it's the Friday going into the Memorial Day weekend. So, the trade on DGLY, that was it was such a fast trade. The stock hit the scanner. All of a sudden, I'm pulling up the level 2. It's moving. I'm jumping in. And then all of a sudden, the bid is gone and the seller is pushing it down. And I'm having to panic exit. And it's just dropping. Those trades can happen so quickly. And unfortunately, a trade like that in a matter of minutes can wipe out, several hours of progress. I mean, it could even do more than that. So it is disappointing when that happens. I think that sometimes what I've done when I found myself getting a little too trigger happy is I've added some additional steps that force me to slow down, like adding a confirmation on my order entry or taking even my hotkeys off my keyboard so I have to manually enter the order. I don't like to do that during a hot market because it will slow me down and that could mean I miss good opportunities. But when things get a little colder, sometimes it is good to take an extra, breath before you jump into a trade. I think I can chalk up today's loss to I was eager to find something moving. At the moment, it was our leading percentage gainer, and it was moving. It certainly did go quickly from 3 to 4. And, there's just going to be a certain percentage of time where those trades don't work. I think my biggest mistake was failing to kind of maintain perspective about whether or not it was obvious based on what other people were focusing on. And other people were really focused on IMNN. So anyways, you live and you learn, and, trading, this is part of the deal, ups and downs, easy come, easy go. And so this is where I sit right here going into the weekend, and I'll be back at it bright and early on Tuesday morning. So those of you guys that get value out of these episodes, I hope you hit the thumbs up. I hope you subscribe to the channel, and I'll put links to a couple other episodes right here and right here that I hope you guys check out, and I think you'll really enjoy. And if you want to check out our sales, our Memorial Day sales on the Warrior Starter and Warrior Pro membership, of course, that would be great. And I think you would really enjoy it. So make sure you guys check those out. And I'll see you back here bright and early Tuesday morning. And reminder, as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical. And there's no guarantee you'll find success. Whether you trade on your own, you'll learn from me. So please manage your risk and practice in a simulator before putting real money on the line.